now I will call Graham de Barra to talk about taking control over your data. Thank you. Please give it up for Graham de Barra.
So yeah, I do use the hashtag BlockspotConf. Normally, when you have events live stream like this, there's more people watching online than there is. So hello, anybody online who's watching from the. So my name is Graham de Barra. I'm the CEO of a product called Festi. Festi is 2 years in development. We have a working prototype, and I'm wearing one of them on my wrist right now. And I'll get a little bit more into what this is, but it's essentially transacting and how transactions are monitored and how you can protect your data and how you can own your data. When I was speaking here 12 months ago, I actually spoke primarily about payments. I spoke about how we're using this within festival settings, events, retail, Irish pubs all around the world. And we actually pivoted over the last 12 months from a primarily payments company into a data company. And I'll explain a little bit about why that's important and how you can also take back control over your data. So this is a piece of art by a Polish artist called Paweł Altamer. It's called Common Task. So I've been working and studying a little bit about data and how it's been commodified. So in 2011, Paweł Altamer dressed up his neighbors in a small town outside of Warsaw in golden astronaut uniforms, and he brought them around the world. Now, golden astronaut uniforms, this has nothing to do with cryptocurrencies or going to the moon or any of the other kind of slogans you might assume is associated with astronauts. What he was actually doing was showing the goal to humankind, which is a socialist concept, and he married it with capitalist intentions, which is essentially humans are currency. And I want you to think about that for the duration of this talk, is that humans, people, are currency, and currency is commodified. So we have a nice money monster here on the corner to think about and depict what it is to become currency, what it is, because it seems to be a very capitalist notion, actually. To become money seems to be the most capitalist ideal. But I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how this relates to blockchain. So when you think about human currency, you're essentially talking about data around transactions. We think about this in blockchain as transactions on a public ledger. And in a supermarket or in a cafe, you think about these transactions when you tap your card, you tap your Visa card, you get your coffee, and you go. But all of this is data that's occurring on you. So you go to your cafe, you go to your bar, you go to your supermarket, and essentially data is being accrued about you, and that's where the value of this human currency comes from. So it also proceeds to ask the question, the producer and the consumer. Well, we used to have producer nations and consumer nations, generally East and West, but now actually the consumer nations have become the producer nations because we are the producers of our own data, and data in the 21st century is the most valuable asset. This isn't a new concept by any means. Foucault talked about this, French philosopher, about the concept of human capital. This is kind of like almost what it looks like to some people. It seems to be that we're moving from a world of arts and culture and into kind of a quite mechanistic brand and consumer lifestyle, right? So we're literally being consumed. Adam Smith talked about this dating back to 1776, about human capital. The acquisition of talents during education, study, or apprenticeship costs a real expense, which is capital in a person. So this is the person's experience, and that's what's making up their value. Those talents are part of the fortune and likewise that of society. This kind of came around the time when we believed that human behavior was rational, so we had a rationalist perspective around economics. I don't think that's a complete picture of the world or the state of people. I think we're quite irrational. And so the reason why data has become so important is because the theories of Adam Smith and Foucault from the 18th and 19th centuries have now been commodified on the cloud as data. Experiences about you, about everything you do, is known by Facebook, Google, Microsoft, all of these companies, Apple, etc. So that is the data, that is the currency, that is the value of the 21st century. But where does that data go? We often don't stop to think for a moment that as we transact with all these different services online and in physical world, we don't think and stop to think, wait a minute, that's mine, that's my thing, I own that. Except no one asked me really. I might have ticked a box somewhere, or there might have been an implicit contract when I tap my card. By the way, you understand why tapping cards have become such a fad recently. It's because the more you can spend on a credit card, the more data can be tracked about you. So we move from a cash economy where that's essentially pretty much private. Some communities still operate like this, like some places in Hong Kong or China, because they believe in personal freedom and privacy. But now we've moved to a consumer culture where tapping a card is as easy as just that. Have you noticed that you're spending more? Have you noticed any targeted advertisements towards you? So these are the questions that I wish to pose this morning on a nice 9 a.m. conversation about this. So I like to think about data a bit like rubbish, right? We throw rubbish in the bin publicly or at home or in a skip or whatever. We don't really think, where does it go? We never think about that for a second. So it seems to be we only think about these problems when it's too little too late. And it's the same with data. So people are the new commodity. That is the product that is being sold. That is the product that is being sold. Facebook is free for you to use, Twitter is free for you to use, etc., etc. But really, you're the product. Twitter is not making any money. You are. But you're not making money for yourself, you're making money for the services that you're using. The World Economic Forum published a paper back in 2011, so about 7 years ago, which was entitled Personal Data, the Emergence of a New Asset Class. And a nice picture of a woman running and all the things about her, her experiences, look, her photos of her children. These are all on your personal cloud, by the way. So other third parties have access to all this data. So it's no surprise then, after the WEF made the statement, that companies then moved from hardware revenue models or transaction fee revenue models towards data mining and mining data about you and selling that data to other people who might find it more valuable than them. Okay? I don't know how many of you are familiar with the ancient philosopher Plato and Plato's Cave. So the allegory of Plato's Cave, of course, is that one day a man is strapped, he realizes that all he's looking at is shadows of himself in a cave, and he escapes, and he realizes, and he sees the sun for the first time, and he's like, wow, this is like burning, this is real life. It's not the silhouettes that I've been living and perceiving down below in the cave this whole time. Yeah, he wrote that like 3,000 years ago or something, right? And here we are in 2018, and I actually found this online this morning. I thought it was quite nice. We're kind of all plugged in, looking at silhouettes of something that we don't quite understand. It's taking data that belongs to us. We don't really see the bigger picture. And there's all these kind of bureaucracies surrounding us and kind of steering us in one direction or another, whether we're aware of it or not. So I like to think about this allegory when thinking about data, when thinking about personal freedom. Of course, the fate of Plato's man who escaped to the cave, outside of the cave, and when he came back to tell everybody, well, they actually killed him because they couldn't accept the truth. So it's kind of also, you can think of some figures in blockchain at the moment who might be also castrated for saying some of the things that they say. So enter blockchain. This is the purpose and intention of this talk today. You're all here to learn about blockchain, or you're involved in startups or something like that. So I like to think of blockchain as a ledger that's GDPR compliant. This has become very important as of earlier on this year. Specifically kind of like Articles 12 and 19, where a data controller or someone who controls your data, like a service or a third-party service, they should communicate, well, they do have to communicate to the recipient of the data, that's the producer of the data, to whom the personal data has been disclosed. They have to communicate this. When they access your data, when they sell your data, when they move your data around, they should tell you and inform you of this. And there's a whole bunch of other consent and related articles in there, but I thought this one was most relevant to a public blockchain, when you think about it as a ledger where you control your private keys and you control the transactions, and you could control who accesses those transactions or that data behind those transactions. So that's what I like to think of blockchain as, a permissioned data marketplace. And that's what we're setting out to build. So we moved, as I said earlier, as exclusively kind of a payments and ticketing wristband for festivals and retail cards, where you could spend and top up your cryptocurrency very easily using your app, where you could go to merchants that now accept cryptocurrency because their point of sale terminals has that option built in, because that's because of the point of sale terminal that we've built. But the main thing here is that you own your data. So the next time you make that tap, that essentially is yours to own and yours to keep. And if you choose to sell that to third parties, like I'm sure they did a survey in Russia, something like 60% of people, they didn't really mind, they didn't care that their data was being used by third parties. So I still imagine the majority of people, even in this room, wouldn't really mind, you know, their cup of coffee being registered somewhere by some third party or the cafe itself to understand a little bit about insights and metrics. But you at least deserve to be told the truth that that is what's happening, and you deserve a slice of the pie. So essentially that's what Festi is setting out to build, is to give you that empowerment behind owning your data and selling that data if you choose, or protecting that data if you choose not to sell it. Reasons why you may not want to sell it, before anyone makes the argument that, you know, you shouldn't have to hide anything. Well, this actually has effects on your like life insurance and other insurance and premiums. For example, if you spend and tap your card to order wine or alcohol, well, that data could be sold to your insurance company, and then next year your insurance premium could go up. So actually this is an argument that's relevant for everybody, not just for those who are privacy conscious. So this is kind of just a mock-up of some of the data analytics. Why this is very useful for merchants and businesses is actually they have the first time to directly engage with people and purchase data directly, P2P, peer-to-peer. And they can understand this data in a trustless environment. So they don't need to trust the source of this data because it comes directly from you. They've bought it from you, you've consented, you've gone into a contract, and now they have it, they understand it. The aim of this is to, of course, eliminate the global marketplace for stolen data, where a lot of companies are getting their data today. So that's another consequence. And the user flow is very simple. As I mentioned, it's an app that you can download. You tap your card or your wristband if you happen to be at an event, and you can top up with your cryptocurrency and spend as you go. You can toggle settings such as your preferences if you choose that you leave it open and you want to just receive passive income on the data that you're incurring, or whether you want to be more privacy prone and you wish to protect your data, you can do so as well. So that's the idea, is basically how can we use a public blockchain as a permissioned data marketplace where you yourself owns the transactions, not just, you know, on a Bitcoin protocol or, you know, where people are, you know, storing asset values or whatever, but rather in a cryptocurrency or a currency or a live environment like a physical store, a restaurant, your day-to-day activities. There are many other companies that are doing this like on the cloud and trying to interact with Facebook and other services online. I feel that's quite difficult because they're asking Facebook for permission to do this. I feel it's actually much more better to build this from the grounds up. And I like to think of blockchain or cryptocurrency as like kind of building the internet all over again, but decentralized, as Tim Berners-Lee envisioned when he first set out to create the internet, and he, you know, regretted that he didn't make it decentralized. So we're kind of rebuilding the internet. We're also rebuilding the physical realm and world around us, and that's through the point of sale system that we've built, and that's through the data protection that we have on each and every transaction that you can incur. So that's it. I'd like to just leave you with that thought that cryptocurrencies can be used day to day, and that your data is actually the commodity behind the products in which you interact with. I don't know if there's internet here, but there is a video that I'd like to play. If it's not possible, that's okay. I can give it a go. So what happens if I click this? Okay. So this is just a this is where we did our Sorry. So we, in March this year, we integrated with our first music venue. So I'd like to share this experience with you and just to see what it was like and then how we interacted with patrons at the bar. Thanks. So that's it. Thanks very much for watching and listening to me for the last 15 minutes. Please ask me questions. I do have to head off directly after this. We have a flight to Korea where we actually have another conference, a product development conference on November 20th. So with the nice background music, does anybody have any questions? Just two, yeah, one here. It's a good question. We've around the answer of like, do we store this on-chain? Well, the idea is to store like metadata on-chain without the entirety of the data because we want it to be, the integrity to be stored, but we don't necessarily want to reveal, personal information publicly to anybody. So actually, what we're looking at is private contracts on the public Ethereum protocol. Thanks for your question. And the guy in the consensus T-shirt at the back. Hi. Hi, John. How are you? Oh, it's okay.
Oh, sure. In terms of accepting it quickly at the bar, do you plug the transactions at a mempool, or do you kind of act as an escrow agent, or is that just proprietary code, or how does that work?
Yeah, currently we kind of act as kind of like an escrow. That's just for the prototypes that we've been doing. It's not necessarily where we want to always be. We plug into exchanges, so we can make exchange instantly as well. So the merchant doesn't have to store the cryptocurrency that the user has decided to use. So you could imagine a point of sale system accepting 150 or so good cryptocurrencies that we qualify as ones that are
Sure.
Good enough. But what we really kind of imagine the bars or the merchants will be accepting is like a MakerDAO DAI coin, like a stable coin. We feel that's the best stable coin that's out there at the market already. It's auditable, it's public, it's like decentralized, and we do feel that merchants, like in surveying them and doing our market research, a big concern of merchants is fluctuation of prices. So they don't want to accept an asset or a cryptocurrency or any currency that fluctuates with the market. So that's why we have an instant conversion from, say, if I choose, I don't know, Dogecoin, and I tap and I spend my Dogecoin for a beer, the merchant can accept that as DAI coin, as a stable coin, or they can accept it as a euro as well if they want. We also give an option that they could do 75% as euro because they need to pay their suppliers,
Okay.
or they could do 25% as a cryptocurrency.
Cool. Very interesting. Thanks.
Thanks for your question. Really appreciate it, John. Thanks. Okay, guys, I'll leave you there. Thanks very much for putting up with me, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.